Hi there, it's Peter Chapman, and I'd like to welcome you to another one of our SKUFood Recipes for Success. And this afternoon, we're going to spend some time talking about relationships. But before we get right into the content, I just wanted to share a few insights with you that our Recipes for Success are a free series that we're doing here at SKUFood to help food producers and food processors to really get through some of the challenges of this COVID-19 pandemic. And so much about our industry has changed in the last 6 to 8 weeks for everybody from one end of that value chain to the other. So we wanted to try to find a way to give back and share some insights and help you really figure out how to improve your food business during these really challenging times that we're facing. So part of our series is that we're trying to pick a different topic every week, and we want to share some insights with you. So I really encourage you to ask questions. You can just type them into the Q&A box at the bottom on your screen. Just click on that and you can type a question in there anytime you want. I am going to take a few breaks during the session this afternoon to help answer your questions. So we'll have a few breaks where we can do that. But just type your questions in, and this is meant to be interactive. I really want to address the issues. So if there's something that spurs a question for you, then by all means, I want you to enter that into the question space there, and we will do our best to answer those questions for you. Also, I just want to let you know that we are recording the session today, and we will be sending a link out to anybody who has registered. So a link will be available, and then also we'll post a link within our SKUFood membership site so that our SKUFood members can access the content at any time. And also, I want to tell you, I'm looking forward to the session today about relationships, but also we've got a fantastic series coming up for you in May. We're looking at how do we take food products online and be successful with it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more at the end about our May series, but it's a fantastic series that we can really look forward to. And I'm looking forward to it because I know I'm going to learn as well. So let's dive into the content here, and let's just have a look and see what we can learn about relationships and where they're at in our food industry. So the first thing for me is that you should always be working on your relationships with your customers. That is something that is a 52-week job. It's not just when you go for a meeting. It's not just when you have a face-to-face chance to meet at a store or something like that. It's something you should always be working on. But right now, it's really important that you work on those relationships, because if I think back to my time when I worked at Loblaw and was sitting across the desk from suppliers all the time, when I had big challenges, that's when suppliers developed the best relationships with me. When I needed something from them, they were even more valuable to me. All of the regular filling POs and coming in to negotiate costs and putting together ad programs, that's the regular mechanics of business. And yes, that's important for a relationship. But when there was something that really needed to be tackled or was a real big hurdle to get over, the suppliers who really came in and did the job for me were the ones where I would have an improved relationship. So now is the time to work on those relationships with your customers. It is not the time to sit back at home and wait for the phone to ring. This is not it. You shouldn't feel at all like you're bugging them. There are a lot of category managers right now who are working remotely, and believe it or not, I would say they actually have more time on their hands. All those marathon 6-hour meetings where they might have been productive for half an hour are now not happening like they used to. So your category managers actually have more time to deal with some of the issues that they probably would like to be dealing with, which are driving their category and focusing on some of the things going on within it. So it's really the right time to be talking to these people. And for me, the best way to develop relationships with retailers is when you focus on their priorities. So that means that you really understand what their priorities are, figure out how to address it within your business, and then that relationship will continue to improve. And unfortunately, there's no finish line for a relationship with a category manager. It's just one of those endless marathons that you have to keep running. And sometimes there's twists, sometimes there's hurdles, sometimes there's things you got to jump over, whatever it is. And right now we're in one of those points where the road is not straight and narrow like it was, but those who manage the change will improve that relationship, and that will pay dividends for you down the road. So think about those priorities, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about some of those priorities. And for me, I always would have told you sales are the #1 priority. You've got to focus on sales. Your customers are focused on sales. You need to be focused on sales. And that's changed a little bit since we've entered into this COVID-19. I'll call it an era. It's not that long yet, but it seems like it's been that long. So it's sales are different now. And one retailer told me last week that every week right now, they're doing almost the same volume as Christmas week, if you can believe that. So think about that in your business. What would that mean to you? So Christmas week for the retailers would be their single biggest week of the year. So now they're doing that volume every week, volume they never ever dreamed of doing in April or May. So it's, if you come in right now and try to talk about a sales program that's going to give you a 5% lift, they're going to look at you and go, sorry, I mean, we're above that anyway. So it's, sales are still important, but they're not probably the number one priority for them. So when you think about what those retailer priorities would be, I think it's interesting to have that sort of conversation. So what I'd like to do, and instead of me telling you what I think, which I will in a few minutes, but first of all, I'd like to just ask you a question, and you can answer this. I'm going to put the poll up so you'll see a question come up on your screen there. And I just want you to think for a minute, and you can answer more than one. This is not limited to one answer, so you can answer more than one of these things, where I'm going to ask you, what are the priorities? So I've given you some choices there where I'm saying, what do you think the priorities are for the retailers? So just select the ones that you think are priorities for them. I've given you some categories there like sales and inventory, a safe shopping environment, online shopping, margins, always important. And the last one I put there was making your life difficult. So sometimes that's definitely, we feel that's a priority for the retailers. I can assure you, when I was working at Loblaw, I didn't go to the office every day going, how do I make life difficult for suppliers? But I do appreciate that sometimes their actions can be a challenge for suppliers. So we put that one in there for you. So I'm just looking to see what kind of answers we're getting here. And it looks like a vast amount of you would see that that safe shopping environment is really important to them. Inventory management is important to them. So those would be the two leading answers. And then we've got over half of you have selected online shopping as well, and margins at 25%. So you can see, and sales, which I would have told you before was the number one priority, only about 1 out of 5 of you are suggesting that sales is one of the top priorities right now. So isn't that interesting how in a 6-week period, a small space in time, our whole industry priorities have shifted. And so you're telling me that you see that shopping environment, inventory, and online shopping are the 3 most important things, and that sales and margins are less important. And not as many of you did pick by making life difficult, but we know sometimes that can happen. So it's incredible to me. And one of the great things about your answers today are that the reality is you've selected the same 3 priorities that I had. So we are aligned in that respect. And so the 3 things that we want to talk about today to help you, and my goal is to give you some insight into why it's a priority for them, and then really tie it into exactly what you should be doing about it. And actually that's kind of the theme and the same process I use in my book, a la carte, which is a supplier's guide to retailers' priorities. And it was written prior to COVID-19, but it's the same process. It's to say, what is the priority for the retailer? And then as a supplier, what should you be doing about it? Because we have to focus on what we control. So today we're going to talk about inventory. We're going to talk about that safe shopping environment, and we're going to talk about online. So let's have a look at inventory. And the reason that inventory is such a massive priority for your customers right now is because they're seeing these changes in their volume Christmas week, every week, like I mentioned, but not for every item. The basket has changed substantially. So think about people trading maybe to a less expensive item in the category. They might be moving from fresh to frozen. They might be doing more baking at home. So there's all kinds of shifts happening within the basket, and it's impacting inventory levels at store. So your customers are so focused right now on getting the right amount of inventory into those stores. So what are the things that you can be doing about it? Well, first of all, you need to focus on that sales forecast. And we covered that actually in one of our previous recipes for success, where I gave you a process to go through to really predict that sales forecast. And if anybody'd like our Excel sheet that we did, it's just a simple tool. Perhaps you could put a note in the chat or send me an email, peter@skufood.com, and we'd be happy to send you that sales forecasting. It's just a simple template, but it's something that kind of takes you through the process that you should be thinking about. So things like, what is the impact of the shift from food service to retail have on your category? What does the impact of trading perhaps to less expensive items in the category? What does that have on your product? There's lots of other things going on where people are shopping once a week, big orders. So what does that have? You know, if you're an impulse buy, that could hurt you. Or online shopping, we know that's way up. Does that help your category or does it hurt your category? So things like that where you really need to think about that sales forecast. So you need to be doing that in your business. That is so important, is more important than ever right now. And I'm sure you need to do it to manage your production, but you also need to do it so that you can talk to your customers. The next thing you need to do is, what is the amount of inventory you have available? And that's something that you need to have a real handle on. So that would involve things like going back and making sure you have packaging available, making sure that you have safety stock on hand, making sure that you're really checking those POs carefully. So when you get POs from your customers, are they crazy or do they make sense based on what you think they should be buying? You really need to really think about those inventory safety stock levels. Have you worked through your logistics? Have you got that secured so that when they do need product that you can actually get it to them? All those kind of things make for available inventory. And right now, vendors who have available inventory are very important to their customers. And when you talk about relationships, that's one way to build them. And the final thing that you should be doing with regards to inventory is you need to be talking to your customers. So think about, what is the right conversation to have with them? And as I said, it is the time to talk to them. This is not the time to sit at home and wait for the phone to ring. You really need to be going, how can I be proactive and how can I solve problems for them? And if it's Christmas week every week, but no candy canes, then what does that mean to your business? And talk to them and say, we expect we're going to do 5,000 cases. Is that about where you would be? And, you know, talk through that, because if you both agree on the number, if you both agree that 5,000 is the right number, then that's all they're going to hold you accountable for. If all of a sudden the demand spikes to 7, but you delivered your 5 that you both agreed was right, then they're going to say, you know what, you did what you could do. And maybe you pull an extra 1,000 out from somewhere that you can help them and try to save the day a little bit. But the reality is, talk to them and make sure that you are able to agree on what that number is going forward. So now what I'd like to do is maybe just take a break for a moment, and we're going to answer some questions. So I just want to take a break, and we've talked a little bit about inventory and why that is a priority for your customers right now. So just if you have a question or a comment that you'd like to make, then by all means just type it in, and I'd be happy to take a look at it. So so we do have a question here. So the question is, are retailers managing inventory different in their warehouse? That's a good question, because it's always interesting to think about what they're doing with inventory as well. And I would tell you that yes, they are managing inventory differently. They are looking at the safety stock they have, and they might be actually willing to go to more days on hand on some of the items where they're concerned about whether they're going to get enough inventory. And when we see production being interrupted, I noticed today, I saw on the news that we had interruptions going on in the US and different food processing plants. So they're going to try to protect themselves. And it's a balance, because inventory is expensive and nobody wants to hold more inventory than they need to. But it's also right now for them to have stock is a priority. So definitely I would say that you want to be talking to your customers about that, and ask them, are you managing your inventory a little differently? Are you looking to have a little bit of extra stock on hand? That's a great question, because it's something that could impact the demand that you're going to see on your POs. So thanks for the question. And I see one person asked for the sales forecasting sheet, and we'll be happy to get that to you afterwards. So let's dive back in and talk about that second priority, which is that safe shopping environment. And I'm sure you've all been to the stores. You've seen how the retailers have really changed their environment and how they are trying to conduct the sort of the store visit. So that's a huge priority for them right now. And the reason it's so important is they have to provide a safe working environment for their employees or they won't come to work. And we're seeing that a lot, as I just mentioned, in the processing industry, where employees are really getting involved in whether the work environment is safe or not. And retail is one of the biggest challenges. In these big stores, you've got thousands of customers coming through, but we've all seen the lineups outside where they're limiting the amount of people in. And in some of our previous recipes for success, we've talked about how that impacts the shop, right? Consumers are definitely shopping differently in the stores. So that safe environment is a priority. And you might think to yourself, well, what can we do about that? Because it's their store. Well, there are some things that you can do about it. So let's talk about them. And the first thing being, look at your products. In the pre-COVID-19 world, we had different items and it didn't matter whether it's a fresh or a grocery product, but we could have, several multiple items from a vendor. And if you look at what TNA from California are doing, they took what they called a harvest box, and this was something that in the past they did as a Christmas gift for their staff, and also they did it as a donation box for food banks. And apparently some of the retailers in their market in California saw this and they said, hey, this is something we should be selling in our stores right now. So that instead of a consumer and a cashier having to pick up 6 or 8 different produce items and look at them and scan them, and also people are getting leery. They don't like picking up items that somebody else might have picked up. So instead you give them one box with 6 or 8 items in it. I think they keep some flexibility so it's not always exactly the same products, because that makes it difficult for printing the box and some of that kind of thing. They do allow some variability in it, but it's one item, scans one time, and the consumer takes that home. And I have another example. This is another one here, which is some condiments for Canadian summer barbecuing that was done by French's. And again, it's the same thing. You get 6 to 7 items in one box. And when you think about it, this could be a good way to drive sales too, because look at that. The consumer who picks up, they might have been looking for French's ketchup or French's mustard, and they're going to buy those two. And they go, oh, I'm going to take that summer barbecue box. It's safer. And it also may sell some items and get some products into their cart that you might not have been able to get into their cart before. So think about your products and how you can be going to the market differently in support of that safe shopping environment. And the next thing you obviously need to address is your processing facility, or whether you're a primary producer or your processor, you really need to be thinking about your own facility. And we've all read, I'm sure, the stories about what's going on in Cargill, and it's really sad when you read the stories and see that we've had workers in a factory, in a food processing facility, who have died because of the coronavirus. And whether they contracted it in the plant or outside the plant, we know that at that one meat processing facility in Alberta, there's a huge amount of employees who have contracted the virus. So that would lead one to believe that it definitely has to have been an issue with the working environment. And we do know that a lot of those workers live in a tight-knit community, so it could be spreading outside of work too. But what you have to do, what you really need to focus on, is what are you doing in your business to keep your employees safe? And that translates into continuity of supply. And we know right now, if you're a primary producer, we have a lot of temporary foreign workers coming in. And I just actually saw in the news today that in New Brunswick, they've said they're not going to allow any more temporary foreign workers. So that will have a huge impact on the food industry. So we really have to figure out how to keep your employees safe. And I'll tell you why it's important from your customer's perspective. And one is continuity of supply, and that is critical. We talked about inventory earlier. The second reason is it sends a message about your business. And when I worked at Loblaw, one of the questions that I used to love to ask people was, how do you find labor these days? And the supplier would sit there and they'd kind of think, and they'd look and they'd go, well, and I would usually get one of 3 answers. And one answer might be, oh, Peter, labor's good. We've got a good, stable labor force. We do active recruiting. We have a training program. So if we do get, if we have a 20% turnover, we can integrate the new people into our workforce, and it's relatively seamless. And I said, okay. A second answer might be, oh, labor's brutal. I can't get anybody to work in my business. Nobody wants to come to work. And even the ones who show up, they don't want to do anything. I go, okay, that tells me something different about your business. And then I would get a third answer, which might be, well, Peter, we have some challenges getting labor, but we have a mixed workforce, one that's 50% local employees and 50% where we bring in a temporary foreign worker workforce, and we try to get the same people year after year so that we can keep our production going smoothly. So those three answers told me so much about those businesses. When I'm sitting across the desk from a person who says, we have good, stable labor, we have a training program, we treat our people, this is what we do, this is how we do it, we have this much turnover, I'm saying that's a well-run business. That's a business I want to do business with. I'm feeling confident that you're going to deliver on your end. When I hear it's terrible and nobody wants to work and it's just a big mess and everything, I think that's a business I don't have much confidence in. So talk to your customers about what you're doing in your own business, about your facilities. Share with them some of the insights, and not that they're that interested in the nitty-gritty detail, but the point is that you have to share with them what's the focus and what are you doing, and in the end, the reason you're doing it is so you can keep producing products and supply them. And I can tell you right now, if I was a category manager for one of the retailers and Cargill was one of my major suppliers, and my supplier is shut down because of this issue, I would be A, scrambling for product, and B, disappointed in that supplier that it got to this point. And especially if other suppliers in a similar industry are able to mitigate the issue and continue to deliver product to me. So share with them what you're doing, because it says a lot about your business. And the last thing that I would recommend when it comes to the whole safe shopping environment, and I mentioned this in one of the previous recipes for success, and one thing I get so excited about is when people actually implement some of the ideas. So this comes from Nova Agri, which is an onion, vegetable, horticulture, fruit and vegetable supplier in the Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia. And I'm sure many of you are aware of all the terrible, tragic incident we had in Nova Scotia a couple of weeks ago. And so what they did to communicate to the employees who work in the stores was they made up some small cards, which they inserted into their onion master packs. And then also you can see on the outside of the pallet that just said Nova Scotia Strong and Country Magic, which is their brand. So it was just a message to the people working in the store that, you know what, we're all in this together. We're thinking of you as people working in the store on the front lines of this whole situation. And we also know that we had, in that situation, Nova Agri has customers who are right in the local communities where some of those tragic incidents happen in Nova Scotia. So it's sending a personal message to employees in the store that says, hey, you know what, we're thinking of you, and in this case, we're all in this together. So I think it's a great example. And one other thing that happened when they were telling me about it was that actually the employees in the processing plant wanted to take those signs home to put in their windows as well. So you can imagine how much that makes them feel a part of what's going on. So think about creative ways that you can communicate with the people working in the store. And right now we can't go in the store and talk to them like we used to. It's just with public health and some of the requests that we get from retailers, they're just saying, please let our store employees focus on getting stock on the shelf. And we have to respect that 100%. So find some creative ways to communicate with those people. And I think there are lots of different ways that you can do that. So you just get creative about it. Think about some of the different options you might have within your products, and figure it out, because those kind of things make such a difference. So let's just take a break again right now, and we're going to maybe answer some questions again if people have them, because I just want to really see that I'm addressing any issues you might have. So just want to check in and see whether you had any questions about how you can maybe communicate with people in the stores, or how you can be a part of this safe shopping environment, because you can play a role in all these things. And I know we kind of think, oh, it's just the store. It's not for me to think about. So is there something that I can do? So we do have a question. So it says, do you think these types of shopping environments will last when provincial restrictions start to loosen? And I think that's interesting. It's something that I know the retailers are spending a lot of time talking about, but the conclusion that they're coming to is that they have to keep the shopping environment like this until there's a solution to this pandemic. Because the paramount for them is they want a safe environment, A, for their employees to come to work, and B, for consumers to feel safe to go and shop and buy the groceries for their family in these stores. So for me, I see that this shopping environment is with us probably at least through 2020. And, you know, we hear no large gatherings. We hear conferences being postponed, canceled until the end of 2020 at the earliest. So I believe this shopping environment is here with us for the rest of this year. So we have another question here, which says, how do we as suppliers encourage more product knowledge about our products from employees of big name grocery stores? Mom and pop shops seem to care a lot more about learning the ins and outs about the products, but it's hard to get the big box employees to care. It's different environment for sure, and the smaller shops having a much closer relationship with customers, but even basic product knowledge, like what the product is difficult to inspire in some employees. Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. I think that is true. And when we think about the smaller stores, they really have to kind of work harder to generate sales and keep up kind of thing, because the big stores have more bells and whistles. So yes, the smaller stores have to be better at product knowledge. They have to be more engaged in the selling process. But there are ways to communicate with employees at the big stores. So one thing you could do, if you think back to that Nova Scotia Strong message, you could put something within your case or have it printed on the inside of your case that says, this cheese is great on pizzas, or this is the best for such and such. There's a whole bunch of ways you can do it once we're allowed to go back into the stores. If you use a distributor, broker, somebody who has retail coverage, then I would encourage you always to be trying to hand out information and talk to those people in the stores, because I agree with you 100%. It's so important to have people working on the floor, and we have to be realistic about the amount of selling you're going to get out of the big stores. I certainly appreciate they're not going to be super sellers, but if they do have some product knowledge, the good ones will use that to their advantage. So you can communicate within your cases, within your product right now, but then once things get loosened up and hopefully we get back to an environment where we can all be part of the selling process in the store, then I think that it's about going in, finding them. You can offer to do a session at a department manager meeting. I've seen where suppliers will go in and do like do lunch for department managers in the store. So all stores have a weekly department manager meeting. So if you've got a great product and you want to get it across to them, then you may have to go and do a lunch for them, offer to do lunch for their department managers. There's lots of different tools that you can use to try to really build that relationship. And we have another question here. It says, are retailers and consumers looking for more local and or Canadian products since COVID? And if so, how can smaller companies take advantage of this? So I would say the answer to that is yes. I think for a few different reasons. One is that consumers are telling us we want more Canadian products. And this would have been something that was definitely part of the shopping environment, part of our food industry prior to COVID-19. But I believe that that is ratcheted up since that. People are more concerned about where products are coming from. They want to know where their food is produced. So to answer, I believe there's more demand. So then how do we get those products into the stores? And I've got a great good news story for you at the end, which I will share at the end. But but to answer the question, it's really about making sure that the retailers know what you have and being available. And I know sometimes we're saying right now it's hard to approach them and that kind of thing, but if you have inventory on a product and you can meet the hurdles that they need, I don't think it's a time when they're going to relax their expectations, but it is a time when they may consider new things. And I think that there are avenues to be able to do that, and finding if it's the Sobeys local program is one avenue. But I know that all of the retailers, it doesn't matter which one it is right now, we know that even Walmart are more interested in looking at regional local products because they're being told by their consumers that, yes, we want more of it. So then you got to say, okay, how do I do that? and it's getting in front of the right person. And each retailer has different people that are what I would say is the right person. And it's not always just the category manager. There are some people at each of the retailers who have more focus on the regional products, and they are the ones who I think would be the one to open that dialogue with. And if any of you want to give me a call or something afterwards about who is that right person within the retailers that you're interested in, then give me a call and I'd be happy to try and help you with that. So let's go back, and now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the last of the 3 priorities, which we said we were going to talk about. And obviously that is online shopping. And we know from what we're learning and seeing in the news that online shopping has grown exponentially since COVID-19. Public health officials are telling people to stay home. I've even heard them say in our province, don't go to the grocery store, do online shopping, which, I mean, we never would have heard comments before like that from politicians. So, but that's what consumers are, being told to do. So how does that impact you as a supplier, and what can you be doing about it? That, there are a lot of things. And what I understand is that online shopping has increased by 7 to 8 times. So you can imagine if someone came to you and your normal production is 1,000 cases a week and said, oh, we need 7,000 next week. And maybe they did back in March, I don't know, hopefully. But you can imagine how that would throw a wrench into your business. And this is every week for them. And plus they have consumers who are upset because they have to wait a week to get their order, and they're trying to ramp up. So, but let's talk about how you can affect the whole online shopping. So one thing is that I will tell you is that this week, Sobeys are starting to test their new Voila program. And this would be only in Toronto, where Sobeys have opened or built a brand new fulfillment center dedicated to online shopping. And this is a partnership with Ocado, a company from the UK who's done this in European markets. And now Sobeys are launching their program. So in the past 6 weeks, Sobeys was actually probably at a disadvantage to a lot of their competitors. They do have online shopping in Quebec through their IGA stores, and Thrifty in BC, where they've had that for quite a while. But in the Sobeys Safeway business across Canada, they have not had the opportunity for online shopping. So now they're launching it in Ontario. And really what Voila does for them is it's almost a leapfrog over the competition, because they're now the ones with the dedicated fulfillment center. So it's different than the Loblaw or Walmart model where you order online, the order goes to your store, somebody goes around the aisles and picks your products, puts it into a bag, and you go and pick it up. Well, Sobeys now have a fulfillment center dedicated to online shopping. So when you're talking, if Sobeys are one of your customers and you supply the Ontario market, you definitely need to be communicating about this. And I would really encourage you, whether you're in that market or you know somebody in that market, try it out. Learn about it, see how it's working, see what the good and the bad about it is. So that's happening. So here's Walmart's online platform, and you can see where they're promoting Bake a Batch of Cookies. So if you click on that one, shop, it gives you a bunch of ingredients to bake cookies. So they're trying to bundle things and make it easier for the consumer. So for you, you need to figure out what they're going to bundle and how to get on that list, because there's going to be consumers who log into Walmart and go, oh, I'm going to bake cookies. We're all home, and we all have heard the stories about yeast and flour and baking going on. So they're trying to push people into certain activities, and your job as a vendor is to say, how do I get on that list? Because that's how people are going to shop if they're shopping at walmart.ca. Another thing for you to really think about is, what is the service level for your online products? And I can tell you from our personal experience, because we have been doing it in our house the last 4 weeks. And last weekend, I'm not going to tell you which store, but we had 23 items in our order that were not available. So I got an email prior to going to pick up the order that says there's 23 products that are not available in your order. Well, that's about a 75% fill rate for me. And I don't think that consumers are going to accept that, and retailers are not going to accept that. So when I went to the store, I used my one trip in that week to go in, and I found 18 of the 23 products that they told me weren't available. Now, maybe they picked the order the day before and they filled the shelves, but I'm not sure about that. I think that they're just struggling, because if you order something that, say, I'll give you an example from our order, was cereal from the natural food section, and if they go to the regular cereal aisle, they're not going to find it. And we have to be realistic. They've hired a whole lot of people who don't know the food store, and they're trying to get used to shopping and picking products everywhere. And if they go to the cornflakes section, they're not going to find cereal that would be in natural value. So I think that there's a lot of learning for them, and I think that they have to really try to educate these people. But you can also do that too. You can help. We're trying to help consumers say where to find the products, because even shopping for them online sometimes is hard. You can't always find what you're looking for. So my recommendation to you on this one is take 25 people, find 25 people either within your business or people you know, something like that. Get them to go on to the different platforms and try to buy your products, and just learn from the experience. Did they go to the wrong category? So say if you're selling a barbecue sauce, was it easy for them to go through the sort of the grocery to condiments to barbecue sauce, drill down, and find the brand? Or did they think, well, it's barbecue sauce, maybe it should be canned and jarred, and then they went off in a different sort of drill down menu and got lost? So learn from it, and then communicate that to consumers in your online social media. And you can say to them, if you're shopping at walmart.ca, here's where we are. If you're shopping at loblaw.ca, here's where we are. If you're going to the new Sobeys, voila, here's where we are. So help consumers find you, because if you don't, you're not going to be on the orders, and that's going to hurt you, because more than 10% of volume is being done online. And that leads me to my next point, is that people are creatures of habit. And we know from past experience, and one of the numbers which I often share with people is comes from Catalina Marketing, which is a huge consumer marketing company in the US, and they studied millions of orders across the US, and I think it's probably reflective of what we would have in Canada too, where the average household, so this is the average household across the country, would only purchase 260 different items in a whole year from a grocery store. So there's an average of about 35,000 SKUs in a store. So the average household is only buying 260 of the 35,000 SKUs we make available. Now, my 260 are different than your 260 and different from somebody else's 260. But the point is that we're creatures of habit. We find something we like and we stick with it. And online shopping actually makes that even more pronounced, because you can go in and it says, you know, you go into my shop and it lists previous orders, it lists items you buy most often. So you can do your shopping that way each week. Instead of drilling down through the grocery department to find the barbecue sauce you want to buy, you just go back to a couple of weeks ago, I bought it, and that's the brand, and that's the one I'm going to continue buying. So think how difficult that is to try to launch a new item and introduce something. So we have to be planting the seed in people's mind before they go in to do that online shopping, because if not, we may be very hard to get people to buy and do something different that we want them to do. And now we're starting to see ads pop up in the online platforms. And here's an example, just one from Atlantic Superstore, where you've got Orville Redenbacher popcorn right off the top, and it says shop now. So you can click on that button and in you go right into the Orville Redenbacher popcorn. You bypass everything. Now there's going to be a price to pay for that. I'm sure Loblaw are charging people well for that. But even if you're a smaller regional vendor, I think that we have to start to look at opportunities to participate in this online shopping and making it part of that trade spend that you would have with your customers. And then the flyers. I mean, now if you go to IGA Quebec, if you hover on an item in their flyer, when you go into their online shopping platform, you just click on the item and you have the option to automatically put it into your cart. So it's brought the flyer back into play more, because what I would have told you before was the flyer was actually losing some of its luster, and online shopping, people didn't pay as much attention. Well, now the flyer's there, you can just easily shop the flyer and add those items to your cart. There's still a challenge with lead time, because often you're doing an order and the flyer is only available until Wednesday that week, and your order is not going to be picked until Saturday, so you're blind to the flyer. But that's something that the retailers will overcome, as they improve their ability to service orders quicker and that kind of thing. So flyers are definitely something. And so you may want to go back to considering those inside blocks are more important to you now. And my final point on online shopping is just really focus on where your items are. So I just went in and did a little research. So this is Save On Foods, and I'm sure I could find a similar example in a lot of them, but you can see that we have Cheerios that are listed under the granola section. Well, if I was looking for Cheerios, I would never go and look in granola. So I would probably look for kids cereal or family cereals or something like that. And here we have Cheerios in granola. So it's not the category manager who puts the Cheerios into that part of the online platform. So you need to figure out, if your item is not listed correctly, who do I talk to? And if I was General Mills, I'd be saying to Save On, excuse me, we're never going to sell any Cheerios if you put them in the granola section. So can you please put them back in the right category so that people can find them? And it's probably just a flag or something that needs to be adjusted as part of the listing process, but it's something, and you need to make sure when you're filling out all the information and listing forms for your products, be accurate, because they're using this information now to build all these online platforms. And also make sure your photo is up to date, because if it's not, then the consumers may not recognize your product. So think about that item maintenance, and it's always been important, and retailers always would have been big on data integrity and forcing suppliers to come to the table on that. But it's really critical with online because people don't see it in the store. They're shopping from this screen. So really try to make sure that that you are staying on top of your item maintenance and keeping that data integrity where it needs to be. So I'm going to take another break here and address some questions again if anybody's got any. I see there's one here in the chat. How much have retailers' expenses increased due to the plague? Every week is Christmas, have their expenses increased significantly as well? So they definitely have, and we know that the retailers are all offering premium wages to their employees for coming to work right now. And in a retailer, plus or minus, your wage cost is probably between 8 and 10%. So they've offered, a lot of them, it's about a 10 to 15% increase in that. So if we kind of do some round math and we say if wages are 10% of their total cost, and they've increased their salary by, or their wage costs at store level by 1.5%, that probably, or sorry, 15% on the 10% is 1.5%. So, and the store is not all of their wages, but it's probably increased their wage costs across their business by between 1 and 1.5%, obviously a huge number in a slim bottom line business. But the other thing we have to remember is that they're probably seeing an increased overall melded margin in their store. So consumers are less able to shop the flyer, because if you're shopping online, you don't always have exposure to it. And in the past, when we would shop in the store, we'd look at a category and we'd say, oh, this one's on special, I might take that one instead of my favorite one. Whereas right now, people are really making a list, and they're going into a store and they're really sticking to that list as much as possible. And shopping in a store is not what it was. It's almost like it's like going into a somber place right now, as opposed to a kind of a treasure hunt for deals and exciting food products. And they will work to try to get that back. So I would say that the retailers right now are probably net contribution. They're probably the same from a percentage point of view, but growth in dollars, because their sales are up by anywhere between 20 and 40%. So they're taking more dollars to the bank. Now they've changed some things in their stores, and that which does have a cost, and they're probably, their labor is less efficient than it used to be in terms of the amount of orders through per hour and that kind of thing. So there's probably some toing and froing, but I would say that percentage wise, they're probably close to where they were. So I'm just going to check here and see if we do have any more questions here. So here's one where somebody's asking, I've been working to build a brand in a fresh department, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose brand equity with online shopping. And that is true. I think that's something that we should always be thinking about, is that brand equity that you're working on within your business. So if you have a brand and the online platform doesn't show your photo. It might have a generic photo of berries or onions or carrots or apples, whatever the commodity is. Then what I'd be going to the retailers with now, and they're all trying to make their online platforms better. So how do you get some of that branding? Maybe you use some of that "we're local." Consumers are looking for local. So in our region, can you put a photo perhaps of the producer with a t-shirt with your brand on it or something like that, where you can get some of that branding awareness back into the shopping environment? And I would also say that that goes also back to that question about, or the opportunity, I guess, not question, but how do you communicate with the people in the stores? So talk to them through your packaging, through in your boxes and cartons and all the things that you use to deliver your product to the store. Talk to those employees and send some messages to them about your branding. And you may have to be more proactive on social media than you were before. Everybody's home, trust me. I think that there's so many people looking at social media these days, so you could probably get more effective spend out of social media to help building that brand. But we always have to be aware of it. It's just like this relationship conversation. I have another question here. Where are product info and images sourced? From GS1. So yes, that's where the starting point is for that, for sure, is that suppliers have to load all that information into GS1, and the retailers do pull that information. So, but I know there are examples sometimes where you may update information in GS1, but the retailer does not update it on their end. So that's why you always have to be looking at those online platforms and saying, is it right? And if it isn't right, find out the correct person at the retailer who's pulling the information and marrying up the information you've supplied as a supplier with what they're using in their database. So that's why it's always so important to be watching what's going on there. And I do see another question here. Is there any hard data showing shoppers' preferences for lower cost items? I carry a high-end coffee and want to know the percent of consumers lost currently. So have I seen any specific data? No. But I definitely would say that given consumer confidence, and I have seen some studies by McKinsey, large consulting firm, and maybe follow with me afterwards. I can certainly share those where they're trying to get a handle on how is consumer confidence going to impact the shop. And we're seeing, close to 50% of the people probably saying, I'm going to look for ways to spend less money. And certainly if you are a higher end in a category, if you're in the top 10%, then there are going to be consumers who are going to trade. I'll use the word trade down, and I just mean really more from a price point down. So, but maybe we can follow up, and I'd be happy to have that conversation with you and share some of the insights that I've seen. So, but it's definitely something to definitely what you need to know, because when you're doing your sales forecasting, it definitely is one of those factors you need to bring into that forecast. So another question here, are you seeing any shifts in consumer preference of retailers, Sobeys versus Walmart versus Loblaw, as consumers try to do a weekly one-stop shop? It is interesting to see the dynamics playing out in the market, because we would say that on the one hand, the stores who have the online capabilities probably had a bit of an upper hand. So the Loblaw, if you're in Atlantic Canada, where we have really a market that's Loblaw, Sobeys, Walmart, Costco, we would have said that Sobeys would be at a disadvantage because of the no online shopping. Same in Ontario, really. Metro has an online platform. So, but it's interesting because consumers are really wanting to shop where they're most comfortable right now. And it's hard to put an actual number on that, but they want to shop closer to home. And a lot of times we see Walmart and Loblaw and Costco stores located in some of the sort of more industrial shopping, kind of outdoor power centers, that kind of thing. And it seems right now, because a lot of the other retailers in those locations are closed, that they are doing less traffic out there, and consumers are shopping at those smaller stores a little closer to home. So I think what's happened is that Walmart and Loblaw and the other retailers with online platforms have maybe picked up a little bit from that, but Sobeys, because they have more stores in smaller communities and maybe closer to the residential areas, they are getting more business that way. So I really don't think that it's going one way or the other with with the situation that we're in. So I want to say thank you for all the great questions. That's fantastic, and I really do appreciate all the interaction that we're getting with this, because it's great to be able to address the issues that are on your mind. So I'm going to continue on and just wanted to share a little bit I guess to wrap things up and tell you that in your food supply businesses, you really do need to be focused on these things, which are such big priorities for the retailers right now. So really be focused on that inventory. You want to be focused on how you can play a role in that safe shopping environment, and online shopping as it grows over 10%. And we know it's going to level off a little lower, but I would estimate that once we get through all of this and our stores return to, you know, closer to what they were prior to all of it, which could be through to the end of this year, we don't know yet, online shopping is going to stay probably north of 10% in Canada. So you need to figure out how to make it a part of your business, and it's so important. As we try to end every SKUFood recipe for success and talk about change and accepting change in the market, I always try to share some good news with you at the end, because I know there are a lot of challenges for everybody in the value chain. So this is one, and this goes back to that question about local products. So London Drugs, which are a drugstore chain in British Columbia, I don't believe they have any stores in Alberta, they might, but a fairly major player in the drug chain in BC, in the drug channel, have announced that they're going to take the center aisle in their stores and make it available to local producers to sell their products. So if you're a local producer and perhaps used to sell your honey at a market or something like that, and that avenue is not available to you right now, London Drugs are going to make space available to producers and processors like that in their stores. And they sort of, the part of the media release was about how the impact on small business through this whole pandemic. And so they're making some space available in their stores. So I think it's a great initiative, and I would suspect that we're going to see some other retailers follow suit, because one thing about a retailer is if one person's doing it and they think the other one's got a little advantage, then they're going to jump on it and do it too. So I think you're going to see some more do that. An example from a New Brunswick business where they changed their production, they're a maple syrup producer, Southbridge Maple, and now they're producing hand sanitizers and getting it bottled and packaged. And to turn something around so fast, we've seen other examples like that where people have changed their production to support healthcare workers and also to support people who want more hand sanitizer. Congratulations to them for doing that. And the last good news story I have for you today was obviously we know that the airline industry is devastated by this. So WestJet had a big supply of all those pretzels that we love to have when we're able to fly across the country, and they've donated those to food banks in Calgary and Ontario where they had them, and millions of packages of pretzels. So again, people who need that need food are going to be able to enjoy a bit of a snack compliments of WestJet. So just some of the good examples of things going on. There's lots of other ones. I think that I continue to say how the food industry is just totally stepped up during this pandemic. And if you want my honest opinion, I think that sometimes some of the other sectors in our country are not stepping up as well as they should. And I think that we all should be so proud of the food industry. And so I see another comment in there from Jeff about London Drugs, excellent example of change in responding to local demand. So I agree. I think it's a great initiative, and congratulations to them for taking that on. So finally, I referenced earlier that I'm really excited about what we've got for May as well. And if anybody has any questions about relationships, I'd be happy to, send me an email, peter@skufood.com, or give me a call, 902-489-2900. I'd be happy to answer the questions for you. And May, we've got a 4-part series. And I'm really excited about this because I think this is such an opportunity for so many food producers and processors, and that's how to take your products online successfully. And we've got a guest who's going to come in who is really incredibly knowledgeable about this. So Carolyn Crew, who has a business called Duckish, and she is selling her skincare products online on her own e-commerce platform on Amazon and also at retail. And she's also looking at some other different channels where she can sell her skincare products. So I am so excited because Carol and I are going to do the sessions together, and I'm going to learn from her just at the same time that you'll have the opportunity to learn from her. So we're going to send the link out to you. So everybody who's been here today, and you can actually register for the 4 at once if it makes it easier for you, so you're not having to think about registering every week. So the first week, what we're going to talk about is we're going to say, is your product right for online? So that's the first thing that we're going to do, because there's a lot of considerations that you need to think about. Second week, we're going to talk about how do you conquer Amazon, and that's a big one. And there are a lot of different variables to selling on Amazon, but it can be so powerful and a very valuable channel for you. The third week, we're going to talk about your own e-commerce platform and how you go about that from the back end. And we're going to talk about fulfillment and some of the important things, because it's one thing to put it on your website, it's another thing to be able to fulfill the orders and get them out. So we're going to do that. And the last week, we're going to talk about some of those other options out there, like subscription models and some of the other things that you can do to build your volume. And I think there's so many opportunities, so we're going to explore some of those. And I think sometimes people don't see the potential in that. And I also see that Susan has added the link to register for those online sessions into the chat. So I'd encourage you to take advantage of that, because I think they're going to be fantastic sessions. And I'm really looking forward to talking to Carolyn about it and really learning and then challenging her too with some new ideas that I might have, and see what she thinks about that. So next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Atlantic, 1 p.m. Eastern, May 6th, and then the 13th, the 20th, and the 27th. So we'll be here with our 4-part series about selling products online. I'm just going to check the Q&A one more time to see if we have any more questions, but I don't see any. So I really, as I said, I really appreciate the people who are contributing and asking questions. It's definitely great to get the questions from you and make sure that I'm addressing things that are on your mind. That's the purpose of these things, is to help you. So we really appreciate you being here for our SKUFood Recipe for Success, and look forward to seeing you next Wednesday.